In the last video, we have clarified why is observation better than memorization and what their main differences are. Now it's the time to get really practical and find out how we can make use of it. To be able to learn effectively via observing, there is one requirement that each and every person must possess: self-awareness. It's really the most overarching skill of all. The more tuned in you are regarding your body, personality, and just sheer existence of yourself, the more effectively you can learn through what you see and what you are experiencing. But if you are watching a video like this one, chances are self-awareness won't be a problem. The observation process can be divided in 4 subsequent steps. They are called perception, analysis, deduction, and application. So without wasting any more time, let's break down briefly each of those steps. Perception. The first step could be named observation as well, but for the sake of differentiation, we'll call it perception. It's all about seeing, perceiving, monitoring, and taking in. We gather information through our 5 basic senses, predominantly audiovisually. Sometimes we talk about the so-called sixth sense, but that's topic for another video. Anything we can see, hear, taste, touch or smell is an information. Number 2. Analysis. The perceived information goes to the brain where the second part of the whole process starts. Analysis is a process of deciphering the information by separating it into its core elements. If you get a box of 20 different chocolates, you do the analysis first with your eyes when you immediately see the size differences. You also feel that their shape is different when you take them out of the box. Finally, your tongue analyzes the nuances in their taste. All of this usually happens unconsciously. But when we take a more serious matter, let's say choosing a career that suits us well, we should switch into much more deliberate thinking mode. We should first analyze the essence of the job. For example, what skills will be needed? Is it promising from a long-term view? To what degree? And is it a way to thrive and not just survive? In addition, we should also analyze our own nature. What am I good at? What main weaknesses do I have? Or, a especially good question to ask, what am I doing because I love the process and not just the outcome? Step number 3. Deduction. Once we are done with the analysis of whatever we are dealing with, then it's time to start drawing conclusions. This is what we call deduction. Deduction, also called deductive reasoning, means that we are using general premises to form a specific conclusions. So for example, if everybody in the job I want has an MBA, then more than likely I'm also going to need to get the MBA first. Or if I go through 10 different fitness channels on YouTube and each of them says that nothing's more important than consistency, I should derive a conclusion that consistency should be the number 1 supplement I should buy. Well, except for consistency isn't a supplement and you can't really buy it. Step number 4. Application. After the final conclusion is drawn, we are ready for the final step. In this part, we apply the new insight to ourselves and to whatever we are dealing with. Whether it means getting a certification to measure up with our future colleagues or buying a logbook to get our consistency on point, the principle is always the same. We observe the world around us and the lives of others in order to enhance our own. By applying what we deem beneficial and avoiding what seems to be harmful, we use observation to live a better life. The point of this video is mainly to remind you that there is a much better, more effective and longer lasting method to learn than most of schools teach today. Speaking of application, to make this as useful as possible, here is a few actionable steps you should definitely incorporate. Number 1. When observing anything, try your hardest to differentiate between emotions and reason. Oftentimes you might get conflicting conclusions. Brain telling you one thing and your feelings something totally different. Make sure you leave enough space for both, but end up choosing what's appropriate. As a rule of thumb, in anything that has a great chances of altering your whole life, marriage, career, health issues, let the brain do the decision making. Actionable step number 2. Observing is a skill forged like a sword. Alternate between chaos and deliberation. To get the most of this learning technique, you should treat it the same way a smith forges a sword, by applying hot and cold exposure, over and over. The best insights are derived from situations of great chaos, but only if they are followed by a calm phase of deep and rational analysis. In practice, you expose yourself to the heat and pressure of the stressful situation and then cool yourself down by retreating into silence and solitude to draw the final conclusions and applications. Like the strongest swords, the best insights are developed only by many repetitions of alternating between hot and cold. So for example, have you ever fallen several times for a similar type of person that wasn't a good fit for a long-term relationship? If so, every time after you broke up, a calm period of "what's wrong here?" should follow up. If it didn't, an insight to make your life better could never be generated in the first place. If you did go through the reflection phase but didn't derive any valuable insights, chances are you either haven't looked deeply enough, objectively enough, or you might have to go a few more rounds. Either way, like Smith and his sword, your insight will become more profound with each and every repetition of chaos and deliberation. Actionable step number 3. Make your observations into your personal tenets and principles. You can do this by keeping a logbook or a file of your best, most important and overarching insights. Write down your most insightful observation into a logbook. As a rule, you obey. It has to be something very important to you, an aspect of life you don't ever compromise, something non-negotiable. Overall, the Book of Tenets and Principles is a written collection of personal statements, promises to yourself that define you and defend you. What's your tenet number 1? Comment below and let's see what is something we can collectively agree upon. In summary, observation is a kind of learning process that feels very natural and self-evident to us, but has been greatly overshadowed by the memorization-focused school system of last few centuries. That's why Nietzsche's perspective is so revolutionary. As we have discussed in the previous video, he always hated the boring, old methods of learning and preferred to do things his own way. Most of his powerful philosophy was discovered through the 4-step process we have just described. His mind was always open and in search of new paradigms, his attitude bold and unconventional. By observing the world around him instead of taking things at face value, he developed one of the most uplifting and encouraging philosophies ever. The best thing we can do is to realize that there are many forms of learning, and just because something is old or not taught anymore doesn't mean that it's actually not useful. Learn through observation, or as Patrick Bateman would say,
keep your eyes open.
Thank you so much for watching. Feel free to subscribe to gain new self-knowledge and comment below whatever is on your mind. And always remember, what makes you wise makes you rise. See you soon, fellow thinker.